Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Franchise Euphoria. Josh Brown here. Today's episode is brought to you by Franchise 5. Why Franchise 5? I'm glad you asked. Growing your franchise in a slow, deliberate, and thoughtful manner is a smart way to grow. Franchise 5 helps you do this by expanding 5 locations at a time with a Zen-like focus on the geographic locations that make sense for your growth. To learn more about this, go to franchiseeuphoria.com/franchise5. That's the number 5. So franchiseeuphoria.com/franchise5. Now to today's episode. Today we've got a really interesting interview involving Tom Portesy. He basically joined MFV Expositions 25 years ago and has served as president and CEO since 2009. What is MFV Expositions? Well, they do franchise trade shows, and with 30 plus years of global sales executive experience, Tom leads his team in producing the premier franchise events in the United States and a number of other countries, in some cases with strategic partners. His extensive knowledge of the exhibition and franchising industries has made him a sought-after panelist, speaker, and moderator at franchise events worldwide. So it's kind of interesting because though obviously Tom's in the franchise space, I was thinking before I interviewed him, this will be an interesting conversation because I'm not quite sure where it will go because he's really a franchise event planner. But I was really, really impressed by Tom. And what I think you'll learn from this episode is his wealth of experience and knowledge on both the franchisee and franchisor side of things. He was even the founder at one point of an instant printing franchise. And so we talk about what he sees as, who makes a great franchisee, who makes great franchisors, how do you become a great franchisor. So we talk about more things other than just event planning, but he and his company are responsible for some of the biggest franchise events in this country and around the world. So I found it to be quite fascinating. I found him to be a very, very down-to-earth, nice and knowledgeable guy, very easy to talk to, and I certainly enjoyed the interview, and I hope you will as well. Hello, Tom. Welcome to Franchise Euphoria. How you doing?
Very good, Josh. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for coming on. You've got a fascinating background with your involvement with MFV Expositions. You now serve as the president and CEO since 2009, but you've been involved with the Franchise Expo industry for many years, 25 plus years. And you also have a background as a franchise or helping to lead a franchise company. So I thought it'd be fun to have you on to sort of talk about that. I know I've been involved in expos before. Maybe they've been some of your expos. I've had booths and so forth at different expos, but I imagine you've probably seen a lot in your years in the franchise world.
We have seen a lot.
So how did you get involved in this sort of niche area of franchise expos? I mean, did it start off as franchise expos, or did it kind of start off as just doing expos for different kinds of sectors that then morphed into franchise expos?
That's a great question, Josh. And the answer is kind of funny. I was involved in the franchise industry at one point. We had started an instant printing franchise back many, many years ago. And I left there and I got involved in the trade show business, and I was producing events down in Florida. And then kind of said, the one thing that I may be qualified to do, if nothing else, is do events in the franchise industry. So I actually went to work for a company based in Florida called, at the time, Blenheim Exhibitions. And we were producing franchise shows throughout the United States at the time.
Well, so I want to talk about that, of course. Tell me about this instant printing franchise. What were you doing? What was the concept? What was the strategy?
So we were, it's funny, the company prior was involved in some exhibitions and doing events in the computer business, right? So we were doing local events for the end users in the computer business. And the literature necessary to do that was a ton. So we were burning out copiers, producing material. And we just bought our own press, and one thing led to another, and we started to sell instant printing out of the same location. And then we married it with the add specialty products. So everything from pens and key tags to anything you could imagine. So we started selling instant printing and advertising specialties out of the same location, and it was a home run. And we decided that this is a business that's duplicatable, and we sold franchises. And a few years later, we had about 150 units.
Really?
In the United States. Yeah.
So, and then when did you get out of it?
Oh my God. Just prior to getting involved in the trade show business. So I must have been out of it almost 30 years now, a little over 30 years.
So I imagine, that, so you go from being directly involved in a franchise business to now being involved in sort of a trade show business, right? Which is now you're dealing with all these businesses, one of which you helped create. What was that transition like?
Listen, I love the exhibition business, right? I've been involved in producing events in so many different industries, and I love the franchise business. So for me, it's the best of both worlds. I've had the fortunate happenstance of meeting some of the most wonderful people in the world in the franchise industry. People who started a franchise, who's so passionate about it, who loves watching others become successful in that same business, and that's a special kind of person.
So tell me about MFV Expositions. Where are your expos? How often are you doing them? What's sort of the flavor of those expos?
So we're a trade show company based in Paramus, New Jersey, and at this point we do it. Most of our exhibitions are in the franchise industry. So today we produce our big International Franchise Expo in New York City. We produce Franchise Expo West in Chicago, Midwest in Chicago, Franchise Expo West in LA, and Franchise Expo South down in Fort Lauderdale. That's our our 4 U.S. shows. And then we produce shows in Mexico City, Guadalajara, London, Dublin, Frankfurt, Germany, Valencia, Spain. So
selfishly, I want to hear more about the New York one because I think I'm planning on going to that one.
We'd love to. That's a very unique show, and I'm glad you asked about that one, Josh, because it's an event that has 450 franchise companies from the U.S. and around the world. But what makes it really unique is that we'll have visitors from all 50 U.S. states and probably 120 plus countries.
Really? Well, I know it's a huge expo. I mean, it's huge. And how many days? It's like 3 days, isn't it?
3 days. And, it's kind of made up of the who's who. So the exhibitors are the ones we all know and love. And then there's ones that are the up and coming franchises. The next one, that we'll learn to know well.
No, that's really cool. So, I mean, so what's interesting about Expos? So there was one here in Indianapolis. That's where I'm based out of. It was a couple years ago, and it may have been through. Did you ever do one in Indiana?
Not in a long, long time.
Well, you should consider it again. It's like franchise central here in Indiana. I mean, there's so many retail centers with tons of franchise systems. I think the one that was here did okay. I had a booth at it, and I know people who participate. I mean, it was certainly worthwhile for me, but they kind of did it at an odd time in a weird location, and so I don't think they got the exact attendance that they wanted to. But Indianapolis would be a fantastic place to consider it because there's just so many franchise businesses around here. But that being said, I mean, what's interesting about the expos is that they're not it's not just like you're walking through an expo and some of this is what you're doing. You're meeting and you're getting all the tchotchkes and all that stuff. But a lot of the expos have great speakers, and great presentations and information. And I assume you make that a part of your trade shows.
Yeah, I think New York is probably the most comprehensive educational program in the world in terms of franchising. We'll have 70 plus seminars, everything from the A to Z's of buying a franchise, how you go about it, to how you finance one, how to franchise your existing business, should you franchise your existing business. So we cover most aspects of franchising in the educational programs at IFE. But what's interesting, Josh, is you mentioned about doing a show in Indianapolis. Years and years ago, pre-internet, we did 70 shows a year.
Wow.
So every weekend we were doing at least one and two on many of the same weekends. Um, so if you wanted to learn about franchising and what it was and what was out there, you went to one of these expos. Well, the world changed, right? They could go online and they could search and they could do it. So our shows went from 70 a year, where people come to find out what the heck this franchising thing is and what opportunities, to, okay, I know all about franchising. I've done some research. I spoke to some franchisers. I want to see what's out there. I want to meet some of the people. I want to speak to them. I want to shake their hand and see if they could answer my questions. And now we do four a year. So it's. I watched it morph over the years, and it was so exciting and strange at the same time.
What's the biggest misnomer in your estimation that people mistakenly think about franchising?
Well, everyone thinks it's all about food and it's $1 million.
That's so true.
Right? It's $1 million fast food franchise. I can't do that. Well, probably, people would be shocked to know that franchising touches every industry. And although food is certainly a big part of it, it's not the majority. In New York, you will find companies that have senior care, child care, and pet care. I think is always a great way of trying to explain the range of industries. There's no industry that's not touched, from business to signs to, remodeling to IT. It covers every single industry. You could go have a drink and paint at a franchise location for certain franchises, and you could have your pet groomed. It's an amazing array of different businesses and different sectors. And the other misnomer is, the cost. So franchises at IFE, you could buy one for $10,000 and you could buy one for $10 million, and everything in between.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, it's funny you say all that. I mean, all the different industries you've mentioned where, people don't think about franchising. I've worked with people in those areas, and it is so fascinating. I on my website, I have, some videos from, questions that people ask all the time. And the number one question everybody asks, I'm sure you get this too, what's the hottest franchise? And I'm like, that's like asking me what's the hottest small business. I need some more context than that, right? Because what does that mean? But people are funny like that. It's like, and I said, well, it's kind of like the stock market too. I'm not sure just because it's the hottest franchise, it's something you want to buy into. I mean, have they built their way through markets yet? Where are they? I mean, there's so many things that not only go into buying a franchise, but that go into turning your business into a franchise. And I'm curious your thoughts. I mean, I certainly have my own thoughts on this, which I'd share, but I'd be curious your thoughts on, do you think franchising is right for everybody?
As a franchisee purchasing a franchise?
Yes, as a franchisee.
No, I don't. I think that it's, a franchisee is a certain funny kind of animal, right? They want to be in business for themselves. They don't want to be out there by themselves, which is, this great catchphrase in the industry. They're not the rawest of entrepreneurs, or they'd be starting their own business already. They want to go out. They want to work hard. But they want a proven system. They want the backup support. And I think that's what makes a good franchisee. So franchising isn't for everybody, but for a person, who wants to work hard, who can follow a system, it's a great place to be.
What about for business owners who are looking, and I couldn't agree more with that, by the way. I think that's spot on. I mean, if, it's funny. I mean, I myself would probably be a terrible franchisee because I'm always the person that wants to create the system as opposed to following the system.
You probably have a better way of doing it too, don't you?
Yeah, right. And so but I get calls from people sometimes, and it's like, I talk to them and, hey, I'm looking at this franchise. Will you review this? And I start asking them questions. And by the time, 2 weeks goes by, they've told me 25 things they don't like about the system. And I'm like, well, why are you even considering this? Why? You've already told me 25 things you don't like. And that's fine. They're probably legitimate, but they're not going to change them for you.
But God bless those people, right? So they're the people who, they go into the situation, they go, wait a second, that's great, but if we put the hamburger this way, It would be way better.
Well,
And
those people should go start their own hamburger shop.
right now, the franchise industry is full of people who do come in, who do follow a system and become innovators within that system, but they do it the right way. They go to the franchisor and say, listen, I was just thinking of something. What do you think of this? And a good franchisor says, let's try that out. I'm pretty sure the Big Mac came from a local franchisee who had an idea.
I think that's right. That's exactly right. But you have to, at a core level, follow the system and gain the credibility from the franchisor before you get that opportunity. I mean, don't you agree with that?
100%, 100%. And it's something you earn, right? You earn the right to innovate. You earn the right to be in a situation where you can make recommendations, you appreciate what they have. They're going to keep you from stepping on landmines that would otherwise probably be fatal. In most cases, certainly in a small business startup. So take the blessing of this incredible system and all the work that went into it, and a good franchise system will listen to what you have to say.
Now, on the flip side of that, what do you think makes for, a good business that becomes a franchise, that decides, hey, there's lots of businesses out there that think they would be a great franchise, but we all know that not everyone is. In your opinion, what makes for a good franchisor?
A good franchise system is based on the fact that the product and or service is a good product and or service and can be delivered by nearly anyone. If the business is successful because of you, Mr. or Mrs. Entrepreneur, it's not franchisable, right?
Yeah,
Everybody can't wake up and say, you know what, I'm going to be Josh Brown and start a radio show, right? You can't give them the how-to of that. There's got to be some things that make you successful that is just not transferable.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And I think far too many people think that in addition to that, far too many businesses think they have a simplified, good process. And in reality, they don't. You know what I'm saying? It's good for them. But when somebody else goes and tries to follow it, you find all sorts of holes in it. So I think I think that's a challenge. I know one question I get often, which I think would be perfect for you, would be, can you think of some just incredibly unique and interesting franchise systems that have been at some of your expos? I mean, I always get, what's the most interesting franchise? So I had somebody, I thought it was a great concept, but I had somebody who called up, and maybe they still listen to the show, but I thought called me, I think it was from Hawaii, and said they wanted to franchise a dog running business. I'm like, a dog running business? And they run dogs. So they basically go take your dog, run them. It's almost like a pet sitting business with a little bit of a twist. But I thought that was kind of unique. I'm curious what's that?
And it's unique, in the pet. I mean, to stick along the lines of the pet care, you have obviously a lot of pet care franchises. You have the ones that are, just price sensitive, and you can go there and get your dog because you're going to run away for the weekend or whatever. You have them all the way up to these daycare centers for dogs where, your dog can basically Skype with you. You could see 24/7 what they're doing. There's a camera in the room. There's a TV. So, they get their own room. So it's the gamut of those things. And as you know, there's dog walking franchises, and there's even dog poop picker-upper franchises, right?
That's right. No, and I actually work with a couple of those, which they're great, right? I mean, you just talked about it's almost like you're working within the industry, and it does run the gamut of people where the kind of accommodations for your pet is incredible, but people treat their dogs like children, and so it's really it's turned out an entire industry. But is there anything that sticks out from some of your expos, over and above anything else?
I got to tell you, there's franchises that specialize in everything, and it's so hard to pick something out, Josh. It's like, I have 4 children. It's like somebody saying to me, well, which one of your kids is really the nicest?
Yeah.
It's a tough thing to say because, again, given your skill sets, given your passion, given what you enjoy, there's different franchises that are going to fit in. Your investment level, So, I would recommend two things for a prospective franchisee. Take a look at the show guide, or whether they come to our show or not. Look at the franchises. Think of the investment level that you're in a position to spend, and not what the franchise costs, but what you need to invest, meaning what you need to be liquid for, right? Because so much of a franchise acquisition is finance, right?
Well, it's finance and capital, and it's having enough capital to survive. I know way too many people who had enough capital to get it open, but they didn't have enough capital to survive 6 months or a year.
So a good franchisor is going to make working capital part of your, investment. They're going to make sure that you have X amount of dollars put aside in working capital as part of the business, model. If a franchisor doesn't tell you about that, run. If a franchisor tells you that this is easy, you don't even have to work hard, run. If a franchisor says, look, you're going to do well in this if you work really hard and follow the rules, but it's not going to be easy, certainly the first couple of years. And once you get past that, then it's going to start to build, and our programs are going to let you grow and become highly successful. But it's not a piece of cake. Those are the franchises you want to talk about. When they say to you, listen, we want you to have not only the money to open, but the money in working capital, and we're going to help you finance it. We work with the Small Business Administration, or we work with this lender, or we work with this leasing company. What that means is there are people who believe in the product outside of them.
Yeah, no, that's huge. That's a really, really great point. I mean, and is that having these third party and the banks and so forth that are preferred partners or lenders with a franchise system certainly has some validating perspective to it, for sure. Tell me this, Tom, before we go. We got a couple minutes left. You've got an upcoming show, as we talked about, in New York, right? That's coming up in end of May, June. If somebody's interested in coming to the show, one thing, I assume everything's booked up in terms of for booths and everything, or are you guys still selling that aspect of it?
There's probably some available. Again,
okay, so
cutoff is we tend to do things way out, but I'm sure that there would be something available if somebody wanted to exhibit, or I think there would.
So if somebody wants to find out some more information on that, where should they go?
They could go, in both cases, they should go to ifeinfo.com.
So IFE, so Indiana Franchise Expo, ifeexpo.com, right?
Correct.
Gotcha. All right.
For International Franchise Expo, but ifeinfo.com.
Yes, International Franchise Expo, expo.com. Exactly. Just everybody heard those letters right. Let me ask you this as well.
Let me just say this one more time, because I think I missaid. It's ifeinfo.com.
Gotcha. Thank you. That was my fault. Thank you for that. So that, after the third time's a charm there, Tom. I appreciate that.
I think I said it wrong. I'll take the blame for that.
No. Well, in addition to that, you got a cool offering at the site. You got some sort of contest that I think you guys are promoting. So if somebody wants to learn about that as well, they can go to that website as well. Is that correct?
They would go to the same website, IFE Info, but then they would do /franchise me.
Well, thank you so much, Tom, for coming on and sharing a little bit of your insight. I always love having people on who have been in the franchise industry for a long time, because you probably don't even know it or recognize it, but just everything that's at this point probably just common sense to you is new and worthy to somebody else who's looking out to either purchase a franchise or turn their business into a franchise. So thanks for coming on and sharing a few minutes and with us and sharing your thoughts and wisdom and so forth. And like I said, I think I'm going to be heading out to that to the New York to the IFE Franchise Expo. That's May 31st through June 2nd, right?
That's correct. I would love to have you there. And I got to tell you, I really appreciate you having me on. It really was a lot of fun. And I do hope you come. And if you do, please look me up.
Yeah, I will do. Thank you so much, Tom. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for being with us today on the Franchise Euphoria podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to go to iTunes and provide a review. Also, please remember that although Josh Brown is a licensed and practicing attorney, nothing contained in this podcast should be construed as legal advice, because it is not. The information contained in this podcast is general and educational in nature, and none of it should be relied upon as legal advice. That being said, if you have questions for Josh and would like to contact him, please email him at josh@franchiseeuphoria.com. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you tune in to our next weekly episode.